Hey guys, real quick before the video starts, I'm aware some of these slides are not going to be entirely correct, nor is this info going to be up to date for even today, probably, but we waited until it was literally too late to upload this video, so anything that's different or changed will just be in the pinned comments. Alright, let's get into it. With VCT's 2025 kickoff just now underway as of this video being uploaded, everyone and their mother has been telling you what to think about the 48 teams that'll be playing in it. Except for us, so we figure it's a good time to fix that. Hey everyone, I'm Tenrek. I'm a caster for North American Tier 2 Valorant, and also the writer and voice for this channel. Anyway, I would like to start things off by wishing you and yours a happy holidays and new year. I hope you got to spend some time on yourself and the people you love, because you're never going to leave your room again once the VCT season starts. After all, this offseason has been rife with drama, excitement, and new opportunities. Many events have also given us glimpses at the rosters ahead, which have been separated by me into 6 tiers with 8 teams in each. And while ordered, I cannot stress enough how close together and interchangeable a lot of this is. The skill gaps between teams is, for the most part, slimmer than ever. Alright, enough covering my ass. I know you want to see who I think will be the worst team of the year, but I gotta say, I don't think this first team will excite many. Nova Esports stumbled into franchising last year and kept a majority of their team from their playing for it, one that was around the 20 mark in CN power rankings. While their changes were decent and they were continuing to make roster micro adjustments from week to week, that is no excuse for how slow this team looked, point blank period. No combination of these players plainly looked better than most other iterations of other teams in VCT-CN this year. And now, in 2025, they have opted to change absolutely nothing and lock in this starting 5. Call it development, call it faith, call it contract binding, call it cheap. I call it boring. In a sea of Chinese teams that floated in mediocrity last year, every team that didn't have a winning record has made radical changes to their roster and or coaching staff. Nova has not. The competition has no reason not to just completely outrun this team this season, and I think that this time the standings will show a clear outlier in VCT China. Let's talk about Tyloo, an organization that's been hitting the Valorant slot machine so chronically they look like one of those geriatrics in an American casino. They were quietly able to land on 9body, HFMI, and Aaron over the last 2 years, but with a rotating roster and a maximum of 3 players that looked decent consistently, obviously their season was pretty terrible. They are confident they are 99% of the way to that jackpot, though, as so many gamblers are. They've now benched Coldfish, a player who, in my mind, has the skill to fill a 4 spot, at least for now, in favor of 2 far fresher pickups in Slowly and 5CM. The latter has looked particularly confident in what few off-season tournaments he's been able to participate in, and the former kind of destroyed the 2 best teams in Ascension despite his team losing, making me hopeful for this Tyloo squad. But they and we know that those slots odds are still very much against them. Indian banner organization Global Esports decided to swap out 4 of their players in 2024, keeping only 1 countryman in Lightning Fast. The rest of the team was filled by some EU prospects and other bankable Pacific players. Their results were about as uninteresting as the monologue I just gave about them, and they only got quieter as the year progressed. The team has now gone for a full-on reset in 2025, the most exciting part of which is the snatching of 2 of the best players of Chinese Ascension this year, Udotan and Crystal. The rest of the direction Global has decided to go is a little southeast, I guess. They're going to the Philippines, picking up a hodgepodge of 3 challengers players from the region, and while they certainly look decent, they are for all intents and purposes unchallenged. While certainly having cohesion in mind this time, I just do not see a way that this team lacks some form of dissonance going into the season. 2 things could save this team for me. One is the centering pickup of new head coach Juvenile. That guy's in the weeds. The other is Bleed Frag star Darion's emergency pickup due to Patrick's current lack of access to a visa. An emergency 5th less than a month before kickoff. Just the dissonance this team needed. Good thing too, they were running low. Apex has been a hype train operating at schizophrenic speeds from the jump. From a high caliber Ascension victory that completed a 2-year arc to losing nearly half of your squad in mere months to better teams in the region, such as the economy of an Ascension team. And then of course there's the pickup of Fluorescent, the first ever Game Changers player to play on a VCT team. Look, I will talk about Floor a lot in the future. Trust me, we all will. But what I'll say here is I've had the honor of watching her story for years now. I vomit the same things everyone who is actually close to her say. The dedication, the mechanics, the intelligence, even her comm style, it is the level of a VCT player. It's what head coach Danny said after watching her at trials, and he's the guy who constructed this Ascension winning worthy roster twice in a row. That's not to say Floor is going to stomp. Most probably not even close. She's not only a rookie, but she's young as hell. And now, here we sit at the final stop of the hype train. Not completely sure of what the 5th player of Apex is going to look like, but like 99% sure it'll probably be Batujanax from among their trial players this offseason. I do not think anybody who trialed on Apex looked particularly incredible. I do not think it's really possible to trial on Apex while being someone like a Soulcast or a Kayak, so ultimately Apex is going to chase that bag, try and get some good buyouts and a decent vouch for when VCT reconsiders franchising in 2027, and maybe they'll sneak a win or 2 in there. Good luck, guys! And girl. And speaking of Ascension teams who will get roped out as soon as they got roped in, Boom Esports was already holding their heads in their hands in the locker room post-game when they got handed a contract, proving that Bleed Esports did, I guess to a degree, give some players some money. As the tertiary representatives of Indonesia for VCT, there is already a complete lack of pressure on Boom's shoulders. But being completely unproven, a complete wild card with a new duelist in Dose 9, I do not expect this team to be prepared in the slightest. Not because of a lack of time, just because I don't think Boom is mechanically able to keep up with the rest of Pacific. I fear they will be too reliant on hero moments and clutch plays to climb back from disadvantageous mid-rounding, and that doesn't win you games or even rounds at that level. Not to mention playing in such a high-stakes setting without a home crowd behind you, these guys have everything going against them. I do not believe in them. But I will believe in what they represent for VCT. Just going out there and playing the game you love, and making the best of what comes your way, and not committing fraud. Well, for those counting at home, that is now 3 Ascension teams from this year in a row down here, but 2 game is very much like Boom, not prepared in my eyes. The difference from Boom is I don't find the players nearly as behind in skill. The players on this team are super gifted. Silent, Zap, Prizzy, LZ, all of them are living highlight reels. But Spike, 2 game star duelist, not being of age for this league until it's like halfway done, is a metal bat to the knees for this team. I'm sure Gobera will do well. He's terrific, but he is no Spike. There is only one Spike. The real lack of preparedness comes from this org. 2 game as a body just still feels like too small a fish in too big a team's pond. These guys had to shuffle through like 3 AI logos before they finally came up with this, which is... it's fine. Look, I'm not saying we'd all put M80 higher up in our tier lists for VCT if they won Ascension, but I'm not gonna say that. All gamers were quite literally the litmus test of Valorant China. If you beat them, you were in the conversation to make a major. If you lost to them, you suck donkey balls. This is not an insulting position to be in, but it is also not a winning one. This was a team that found a way to look dejected in game from time to time. All Gamers has shuffled their roster at the buzzer, acquiring 3 more players and officially pulling in evil geniuses going into 2025. These guys have a full-blown B squad. Surely they will win champs. In all seriousness, this is a real ragtag roster, and the current marquee transfer for AG isn't really a transfer at all, as their own Crossfire team's star player, LSN, has moved to their Valorant roster, and is now slated to be its IGL and frontman. Good thing too, as it's totally unclear where this roster could end up going. Spitfires, who in my opinion was one of the best performers from AG in 2024, is slated to be on the bench going into the start of this season. I can only assume AG will use this kickoff tournament as a way to test the current main 5 and then go from there, but who's to say? This group still contains a majority of players behind the curve of VCT China, and so I can only assume AG are attempting a Philadelphia 76ers-esque process this year with LSN, which always goes well. Dragon Ranger was probably the worst team to make a major this year. Right after making Masters Shanghai, they didn't even come up with the wins to make the Stage 2 playoffs in their own region. Vukashu was the clear carry for the team when they were behind, which they seemingly were constantly. But this was a team that everyone was just waiting to mature, and it just didn't. Well, DRG have taken that fully to heart. One of the players they were holding onto like a gremlin is turned 18. Spirits 1 takes the 4, and Billy Falloff Flexin takes the 5 on your 2025 Dragon Ranger. A combination of unknowns for this team's ceiling of play, and me thinking that these players just can't nail the matchup make me mentally strong enough to jam these guys in the F tier. Japan is proving to be not only one of the most exciting regions in Valorant, but also one of the deepest pools of talent, and so much of it was thanks to Laz, Zeta Division's star and Japan's biggest Valorant personality. Sadly, he was also Zeta Division's hard carry and by far best player. His retirement sucks so hard for this org, but it's given them an even greater excuse to go all in on the rebuild. Their choices? First, the obvious, keep Depp and Sugar Zero as they continue to look amazing on the field. Then the tougher choice of picking up the core of an entire roster. Months after coming just a few rounds away from Japan's Ascension slot, Clues, Ciota, and Xtil, along with their coach Jonta from Fennel, have been acquired by ZD. While I don't think these players will be able to compete at the very highest level, they will easily upset any team that sleeps on them, and I expect them to develop at a lightning fast pace. They're not going to start off great, though. Having me talk about Gentlemates is like having me live inside a nightmare I had in college where I'm taking a test for a class I've never been to on a subject I never studied. While I have heard bullet points and prospects about the 3 new Tier 2 additions to this roster, supported by the singularly returning Kadavra and veteran addition Zippin, I do not have... How do I say this? I do not have a stance, an opinion. I'm uninformed. I'm stupid. I'm a little dumb guy. I think that's how I say that. Look, I'm not saying that these guys aren't talented. They definitely are. That's what little I know about them. The problem comes when you put everything together in this European smoothie, like so many other better EMEA teams are doing this year, and all these tier 2 players suddenly have to gel on the big stage. Such is the nature of VCT tier lists. If it's a roster quote-unquote in development, then they're going to sit a bit lower. Titan Esports Club are the dogs sitting under the table of the best Valorant teams in the world, just waiting for their table scraps to drop to the floor. Abo and Arby, 2 runoffs from premier orgs, proved to be some of the best players in China, despite Tech's dog water 2024. Tech in response said, seems like that one thing we did with 2 of our player slots went well. Why don't we do it with 2 more? Enter Hao Dong, another far more prominent outcast of the Edward Gaming engine, and Trace Esports 6th man turned tech trial Zhao, now renamed Dynamite, along with After, also from EDG, now in the coach position. I think this team almost has it figured out, and if Black can properly enable the rest of his team of well-weathered players, this team is going to do numbers this year. But I really can't stress enough how much this org sucked in 24, so I made the choice to keep them down here. I am so excited for Titan, though. I hope they prove me wrong. I really do. Loud is in a Sisyphusian condition. After having a blazing hot start in 2024, getting to the top 4 of Madrid, they lost crucial matches in both stages of the season, despite Pancata returning to the roster, and they fell to 9th at the end of 2024. Now they've lost 2 more of their players to the EMEA exodus, Les and Sadok, and while Digizine and Vinny are no strangers to this level of play, I find it unlikely that Loud is going to be able to pick up ground. It's kind of crazy how Brazil has one of the 3 best talent pools in the game, and all 4 of their teams in the league are currently under maintenance. And while some may call that an attack, I frame it as a very bright outlook at Brazil's future in the esport. I hope me saying it like that makes you guys not hate me for this next opinion. Oh man, wow, I'm really sorry about this. But Rome was not built in a day, and MIBR will not be built in a year. This team is a dream scenario for fans of Brazil and Valorant alike. What many consider to be the best player in the world has been given access to his own canvas, a playground that is the South American Valorant talent pool. The results of this build are keeping Artsine, one other player from Tier 1 Valorant being Noswer, and 2 wildcard challenger prospects in Cortesia and Chenome. This will be by far one of the most entertaining teams coming into this year from that one arc alone. Made in Brazil is a team that excites us in 2025. Man, did you ever think that would happen? But as Aspas himself said, a story like this can be hard to be the main character of. There is no doubt going to be a mountainous deal of pressure on these guys, and a lot of people might depend on them to be the saviors of Brazil this year. They well may be, but honestly, right now, who cares? Let's just enjoy the ride. JD Gaming is a team that's been tumbling like it's been inside a laundromat's washer-dryer combo. After picking up an extremely well-proven roster, they choked in kickoff, then had a really unfortunate first stage that pretty much tanked their chances of going to champs. Not to mention days before the second stage, saving Grace player Yi Hao checked out due to health concerns. But they picked up a Nax as a new head coach, and he shaped the team up to a 4-1 stage, where they made stage 2 playoffs and unfortunately had to play their life against Billy Gaming. Shortly after, said head coaches inexplicably dropped in favor of picking up Sword 9 in hopes of turning the team around while prepping for the offseason. He promptly leaves within 2 months. Viva is also poached, and so JDG have now entered the season with 2 changes to the main roster from its last iteration less than a month before the stage. Again. I feel like I don't need to go on here, but I will just a little more. Mr. Connie is a fantastic player to pick up in the final bits of time, but Baby Blue makes me not nearly as confident. He is, from what I have seen, 0 performances that would present to me as Tier 1 ready. I think there's another poor Stage 1 in this team's future. Luckily, that doesn't impact the team as hard this year. Evil geniuses were perpetually crying outside the club in America's 2024, flopping just enough to be considered the gatekeeper of the middle of the pack. They were emblematic of the idea that VCT is far closer than even the numbers dictate, more of a game of matchups, right up until they fizzled out near the end of the season. Potter continues to be EG's best investment, and luckily they know that, bringing her coaching into 2025 and far beyond. But the elephant in the room is of course Ye being back in the region and not with the walking, talking, hype-beasting shitstorm that was Bleed. Sorry, I'll stop bringing them up, but it's hard not to when you talk about Ye. It's now been 2 seasons of him getting absolutely shanked by losses, drops, moves, crime, you name it. Naturally, the move was to go to the very historically financially responsible contract goats of evil geniuses. I want to see this star shine again too, and Icy is another resurrected EG23 B squad member that, alongside Apoth, and of course the rest of the group, looks electric, but this is still a team that just doesn't feel like it has the wheels to make playoffs. Nor is this an org that's proven itself to many of the viewers. Sure, it was caught in the roundabout of matchup hell at the end of the year, proving just how close that middle of the pack is, but that's exactly where they sat, and where I expect them to again. Something they very much have in common with the 4th Americas team in this tier, Cloud9. Look, they're gonna do better than this placement I'm giving them, okay? We know this. They were by and large the 5th best team in the region all season, and they had some of the best cohesion of any Americas team we've ever seen. Crazy fragging potential and unreal space making. Now, Mitch is just as good as, if not a better IGL for this team now than Rossi, and it's good to see Net back on a tier 1 team. The offseason events had looked decent. Oxy is one of the best players in the region at this point. But god, dude, what does the dynamic for this team look like? Not 2 months after Rossi was brought back to Americas, he was left on the side of the highway by C9. Then doing the same to Moose less than 2 weeks after that. Vic is now the sole survivor of the bloodbath this winter, and it gave fans and haters alike absolutely no pleasure to see their faves get left behind. If Cloud9 sees a way to get better, it seems like they will jump both on and off of it at the same deranged intensities, and it's led to a distrust of not the players, but the org itself heading into the season. The roster shifts will still be fresh in everyone's minds when the game starts up, but this team is more than good enough to give everyone other things to think about once they start playing. They are down here for me purely out of principle. China had the most teams in my F tier, America's had the most in D, and EMEA will have the most in C, starting with Spanish organization Koi. After being one of the teams last year that was pretty much screwed by a rough stage 1, they finished the season in dead last. They have done a lot of renovation this season to make a splash in the new year, letting their import slot fly on Flya, a change that obviously excites me, but just about everyone has a reason to celebrate this team. Keeping the squad's 2 clear best stars should be enough for all of you, frankly, but how about nabbing 2 of Vitality's electric coaches? Of all the EMEA teams preparing their cultural cocktails of death this year, if Koi is your favorite, I don't blame you. Honestly, all this team needs to do is get in the oven and wait a while. Experience is the most valuable resource for this team. I do not lack faith in anyone on the roster, especially Filu, who is like one of the easiest tier 1 call-ups ever made. You guys are probably so mad that I have nothing but nice things to say about teams in the C tier, but that's what VCT is getting to, at least for me. Sure, everybody clip farms every once in a while, everyone has their moments, but let's face it, it's not 2021 anymore. These guys are machines. Anyway, I have nothing but terrible things to say about Chilai Gaming, who will have a horrible season and fumble everything God has gifted to them. Anybody who tries to defend the offseason XLG has had this year as some saving grace is the same. They'll weekly go, well, of course it's not very impactful, but you can't deny that XLG has been beating quite a few teams in these events that pay. Dude, have you seen Chinese esports organizations? These events are like if I went to some pickup basketball game for elementary schoolers, took it completely seriously, and the winner got a quarter. Let me shift course and talk about the XLG that everyone wants to talk about. In an Ascension tournament that looked decided from the jump, Rare Atom yet again choked at the finish line, this time to an XLG that simply looked on another level. They were on a runner's high, and then 2 of their players got swiped, and another, Martin, got benched in favor of you. No, not you, the person watching. I kind of wish it was, honestly. It's you, the player, the guy who Trace kicked off their team to immediately become a threat in top-level CM. I'm not saying he's a curse, because he played wonderfully. I'm saying he's a guy who is like this close to being a curse. Who else might this team have decided to pick up? And when? I'll answer the second one first. It was Christmas. Hey, that was not very long ago. Wow. It's Coconut, who is on Hong Kong, Taiwan's Ascension team, Oblivion Force, and Viva from JDG. I don't think I could be more neutral on a set of pickups in my life. Everyone keeps talking about how amazing this team is going to be in the season, and I keep watching them even at their, base form in events. And I watch these players individually, of course, and I just don't really see it. I wish I could vocalize it in a less mean and shorter way than I have, but, I guess it's kind of too late. Seconds after attempting to justify putting XLG down there, I must justify putting Furia up here. God, I'm pissing Brazilian fans off today. My point is, I think a lot of people are sleeping on Furia rather than having confidence in them making top 8s in Americas. Stage 2 was where they got their only dubs last year, and they were close, but they were against great teams. Musera, Havoc, and Khalil had a Linsanity run for a couple of matches that did not matter. Heat is now going to have a far bigger say on the team he's on, and it'll be a responsibility you know he's ready for. It may not matter, of course, if said team flops at the starting line again, but that's how I expect this team to live, as one that could spontaneously combust at any moment. I feel like I almost don't have to talk about Rafa. What a surprise. I think the Brazilian player getting called up is going to do super well. Honestly, you could fit a 5th team from this country in VCT, and it wouldn't even be that crazy to me. My doubts, unfortunately, lie with what members of Furia are still on Furia. They've been getting better, but to be a pro is to get better. Can they establish a pace this year, an ascent? If any team from Brazil can do it, I believe this year Furia have the highest chance. Team Liquid had a decent start to the season, but were tested far harder in their own group, proving Liquid simply wasn't built with enough power to compete for an international event. They were, for what felt like the first time, an org that lacked complete direction, a star that was really popping off across the season, and a decent core. They are trying to fix all of that with the idea of having a star, Patatek, and then hopefully a decent core. Okay, that's very minimizing to the rest of Liquid, but I'll admit, in a roster mania full of teams making so many higher level moves, it's hard to have excitement for, or more importantly, confidence in Camo or Kamek being saving graces for Liquid. Again, we're at the point where these teams aren't bad, everyone else is just better. Billy Gaming had a baffling start to their season, losing out on a playoff spot in their group in Stage 1 after a slew of upsets. With Neff as a new activator, they fell back into a solid groove in order to make champs, where they did nothing of note. Two more members of the team have been chipped away before now, leaving spots that were given to Levius, a reserve player, and Rushia, an academy player. Both of these are pretty clear downgrades from Yosemite and Flexit in my opinion, showing a clear continuous uncertainty for BLG's future. This team needs to hold on to YZ and Knight for dear life if they want to escape having to fully rebuild, and YZ and Knight need to hold that higher level of responsibility now if they want to even get to playoffs. The scariest thing about this team is like, what if they don't do anything new? What if their academy system is just straight utter trash? That question mark is the biggest among many others that land them here. BBL Esports were decidedly the second best Turkish team in VCT, with solid chemistry but almost zero favorable matchups at the highest level. While Turkey is one of the best pools of talent in the game, BBL would come to find out that the real Turkish super team was one that couldn't even play in VCT yet. Thus, BBL are now owners of EMEA Ascension runners-up Pacific Esports. Yeah, we've all had our fun with that, haven't we? While they foster growth in the teenage superstars of Turkish challengers this year, the team at the very top has opted to fully reset, swapping from a roster that was 5/5 to 2/5 Turkish. The obvious outlier of this is Yampy, who played on Liquid the entirety of his career before this. He brings one of the longest and most beautiful threads of knowledge of the game to BBL as their new IGL. Unfortunately, I cannot necessarily say the same about the rest of the squad, which still has yet to make a dent in my brain. Loon and Sociable are two more challengers experiments from the home region, while Chiwa and Profec come from different teams of the very high skill pool of challengers. If Billy Billy was variables in excess, then this to me is like a Thanksgiving dinner of variables, and BBL is just stuffing itself silly until next year. Sure, man, let's run up some buyout money while the getting's good. We literally get to use Rose in our roster next year. Who cares? Japan's clearly more exciting team rests, of course, where its most exciting active player now sits. God, how does one say that after DFM's season, where the organization got its first and only 2 wins ever this year? Not much more to say than that, hey? This was mostly a bust of a come-up. But Detonation Focus Me kept their claws dug into the firecracker that is May, and he now looks to be assisted by what may be the deadliest Korean-Japanese team in VCT history. DFM went cherry-picking in the Tier 2 engine again, and came out first with 2 new gold nuggets from Sengoku, in Jinbung, who looks to take up the new top fragging role alongside May, and meticulous articulator ex-coach Art, bringing a totally new angle to the team. Stack on Akame from Reject, and Cess from Veril, and then bench Cess and bring in this kid no one's heard of before. Wait, hold on a second. Sorry, let me backtrack and clarify. They also pulled a Gen G this year and tout Gen as a ranked demon coming into 2025. This was an unprecedented level of shifting to come from this team, and what was also unprecedented was how great they actually look. Offseason is offseason is offseason, but players aren't just gonna turn off their whole skill floor. They'll still be aim gods. And holy shit, these guys are aim gods. At the drop of a hat, Japan's Valorant scene looks to be revitalized. The big question is how much of a breakthrough they can actually make, and on the tier list, that definitely doesn't look as flattering as how I'm sounding. But the number one takeaway from this for you should be that if there is any team in the world you cannot sleep on for a second this year, it'll be DFM. From a team that has the upset potential thanks to a massive roster shift to a team that is known to be the victim of upsets and thus has the philosophy to not change a thing. That's right, Team Secret are keeping it steady going into 2025. And who can blame them? At points throughout the end of the 24 season, their apogees were getting them into champions level power rankings. The road was set. And then that stupid 13-year-old kid from Thailand we made a video about just Fortnite emoted on him. It's really tough to find a place to go from here. And honestly, with Secret's team so rooted and historic, even if you did want to make cuts, wouldn't that risk an even longer and worse development period? Secret intend to make good on a dynamic map pool and a litany of teams who are not at the point of stability they're at. But with now only one coach and the same 5 players, at some point, probably around stage 1, I expect the Pacific Pac to start outpacing the Filipinos. We are now halfway through our tier list. Make sure you grab some water. I know this is a long video, but I also know that I am not covering close to everything about any of these teams. Make sure to go check out other people's opinions and tier lists, and also to come up with your own. Let me know what you guys think of the season in the comments and who you're excited for. Anyway, let's head into the B tier, where Na'Vi is attempting to bounce back from what is in their eyes a disaster season. After getting the entire FPX roster back together, they came inches away from the first 2 chances at international play, and then completely flopped at the finish line after letting go of Doombros, probably one of the worst front office calls of the year. Well, I hope Artis kills it in China, and the same to the rest of the roster that has gone their own ways. In place of them are 3 players who deserve a great home, and will hopefully be given it with Shao and Angel's old asses. Hero is one of the most surprising talents to come out of the region last year, and he will have another dynastic organization he gets to develop develop in. Koala Noob is a jack of all trades, begging to have more fights put in his hands, and this team is going to do it as well as M80 did. And Rushik is one of the best players from Turkey in the past 2 years that wasn't already brought up to VCT. Tack on Koala's coach on M80 and Happy, and you've got a roster you can bet on quite a bit this season, particularly its tail end. Well, we've talked about these next guys a lot already, and they haven't changed anything they're doing because they made one of the most radical changes in history right at the end of last season. After picking up Primi, a static talent got their asses dragged to champs. The fire has been lit in them this offseason, and their coach Frost continues to be loud. No, dynamic. That is the right word. Man's got a lot of ideas. I can't wait for the games where talent land on the right ones, which Frost has gone on record saying will be entirely up to them. No, guys, that was an unnecessary match. We weren't letting our real strats fly. Just wait till our $500 money match we have in a warehouse in Antarctica against Rapid Lo-Fi. Then you'll see real Valorant. I'm quickly losing my mind here, but Talon are a team that make one do that, leaving the predictability, speed, aim, hand-eye coordination of every player up to a roll of the dice. This team could be anything, anytime, but its best is going to be somewhere around up here this year. Now looking at one of the strangest teams from China this year, Wolves. They got put into a frankly illegal group stage in kickoff with BLG and EDG, and from there refused to put together an impressive stage despite solid round-to-round gameplay. Stage 1 they bombed and then refused to play consistently in Stage 2, with their last 3 matches of the season being a 2-1 win over EDG, a 2-0 loss to Nova, and a 2-0 win against Dragon Ranger. So stupid. Wolves is one of the only teams where their offseason has given a lot of insight into how the team improved. Not just because of the new teammates, but we can start there because, man, are they exciting. Lysor was the one piece of FPX that fell off the team this year, but he is in no way deserving of a team any lesser. This guy is ridiculous, and I'll die on that hill. But Juicy is the new man on campus that's got everyone excited, being one of the best players in 2 consecutive Pacific Ascensions. Now to the most exciting part of Wolves, the parts that stuck around. Spring, Yuikaw, and Sufat have very clearly been putting in the work this offseason. They are aim demons, they are far faster, and they move with far more purpose than last season. They've very clearly been workshopping faster and faster coordination through their offseason tournament play, at least the ones that weren't shelling out food stamps as prizes. Again, Chinese orgs are crazy. People are going really far for this team. Some think they could make some majors, and I'ma say, I agree, they can be at that point this season. So can Leviathan, but we weren't raising this much concern with last year's roster. They were given hellish matchups when it mattered until they just stopped caring by the end of the year and won anyway, grabbing 3rd at champs. But so much of it was thanks to Aspas and Mazzino, the 2 obvious best players on the team. Both of them are now gone, and in their stead are Demon 1 and Natang, 2 of the Valorant players of all time. I'm gonna ask the same question everyone else has been asking. What version of every single one of these guys are we going to get this year? Are we getting Lakers Shaq or Celtics Shaq? Is the EG duo back? Is Natank as good as all of the people way smarter than me about this game say he is? I don't know. But this feels like the safest place to put them. Inside that regional top 6, but always on the chopping block if they choke. And they have every ounce of potential to choke. Carmine Corps had a bombastic opening to the season, going on a tear to Masters Madrid that couldn't be replicated by them. After losing important matches the next stage, they did nothing but downslide. Both the best and worst players of the team have been taken off, leaving only Martine to welcome yet another Epcot ball to Valorant EMEA. Sigetsu and Sadak are the marquee acquisitions for this team, and it's impossible for any VCT fan to hide their excitement for a combination like that to play. Elite's middling team season last year overshadows his individual season, which was one of the best for a Sentinel in the region. Ave is the black sheep, essentially playing as the ultimate enabler for this team so far. He's one of the first players to come up from Challengers Middle East North Africa, and his lack of experience at the tippity top is my biggest doubt about this team. The second and only other one I have is the same issue this team ran into last year, the possibility that they run out of steam and can't adjust to the quickly shifting meta of VCT 25. Well, unless Tejo controls it the whole time. Sorry, he came out the day I'm writing this segment, and I'm a bit traumatized. I want to think of a reason to not like RRQ, but I simply can't. I think it's because of the role they have in VCT. They're like the coworker you have to invite to your party since you invited all your other coworkers, but your other coworkers are your friends. But in an environment that lives so desperately to have a conversation about a top 6, RRQ kept piping up in 2024 Pacific, refusing to let the crowd of T1, Team Secret, and Talon out of their sight, off the back of great coordination and even better individual carry potential, and with a frankly very difficult season schedule no less. Doing the math though, it's easy to see that it simply does not sway my opinion on where this team will place, and that is below a bunch of other teams in Pacific. They can compete, but they can't complete. Definitely not jazzed to see Elmimore dropped either. He was one of my favorite parts of this team. Every part was, really. Their players cryogenically frozen in a state similar to all gamers last year. Beat them and you're good, lose to them and you're bad. If Trace Esports faced off against any team other than EDG at kickoff top 4, they could have gone to Madrid. And if they played against Dragon Ranger Gaming any other day in stage 1 top 4, they would have gone to Tokyo. But Trace Esports was still not satisfied and decided to drop you and pick Bianca up out of the water. A bonkers stage 2 gets them a very clear 3 seed that they carry highly into champs. They made everyone who wasn't paying attention to them look like an idiot as they cruise to a top 8 finish. I'm so glad a lot of people got to see the kind of passion a team has to have a year like that. If I was Destroyer, seeing my team get inches away from international acclaim and then not showing up enough on the last day again and again, I would be acting exactly the way he is. And this worked. They got the champs. They did it. So why change a thing? Let's keep this party going. Bianca fits right in, and every one of these players have been in the dojo, and I think they're going to come into this season and do a little worse than last year. Sorry, guys. Giant X were one of the most bullied teams of 2024, and just as they found their footing, all the other teams had already been doing that for like the whole year, so they still lost. They ended the season in the bottom 3, but had room to reset. Faith in Purpo is extremely justified, and Cloud is literally one of the greatest of all time. No problem with holding on to him. If GX had a quarter in their back pocket for the rest of this roster, they low-key might have been able to swing this. This may be the 3 single best bang for their buck players in EMEA this year. Runner was the most underutilized player in 2024 by far, primarily because he was a grade A activator in a grade D role for activator. Now on Initiator, I have complete faith he's going to level up in 2025. Tomasi was mega quiet for a lot of his season, being the player with the least direct role in one of the better teams in the region. Another man who needs direction. How about he starts looking for it with these guys? Bottom line, Tomas is a frag star waiting for the right stage to shine on him. Whether he's ready for it is truly still up in the air, but I think he's got it. And then there's Westside, who made crazy noise this past year in East Challengers. The ultimate heat check in the region, nothing could really get past him, and he also had one of the best headshot rates out there. I've been so excited to have an excuse to bring him up more, and this is his time to shine. He 100% deserves it. I'm telling you, man, this team is a recipe for success, and it'll only get better with time. These guys could totally make champs if you turn your head. In a sea of player soups and salads in EMEA this year, this one looks the tastiest to me. On to the A tier, where Pacific once more takes up the most spots. Specifically, only one region. Do you realize how unprecedented Korea's rise in the past 3 years has been? They are now the best region in the world. They probably have 2 or 3 more teams in challengers that are ready right now that could compete at Pacific. Of the 4 teams from the country this year in VCT, the worst will be by a hair DRX, who made 1 player change between each split of the season, one that was plagued by losses to Gen G, who were the ones to kick them out in both of the first 2 tournaments, but they retained a core that could not stop winning, and eventually everyone else gave way enough. They went to champs and made top 6. Mere days ago, I would have only told you that 2 members of that champions team were retained, with Mako as one of the most improved IGLs of 2024, and Flashback finally coming into his own in the finality of the season. But Secret Weapon Bane has been yanked back in at the 11th hour, and he's an immediate upgrade to Atan, who has been relegated to DRX Challengers. Now, let's bring in Freeing, who is arguably the MVP of Ascension China this year, and Hyun Min, this duelist dragged out of Japan Challengers that is secretly one of the craziest gamers you've ever seen in your life. This guy's an aim freak. This team is going to have comms down by the beginning of the season and be just as high level a threat as they were last. Hopefully, they break through a little more often. Screw it, let's get 2 out of the way right now. One of the best Ascension teams we've seen in some time, and it comes from Valorant's strongest region. What a story. For those who don't know, Nongshim Red Force was a strong contender in Korean Challengers, and in fact, by the end of the year, absolutely no one could beat their team, except for one single other team who also couldn't lose, called Sin Priza Gaming. Despite their best efforts, a 5-map extravaganza had SPG win the Ascension slot over Nongshim Red Force. Sin Priza went on to handily be the favorite and the Map 5 extravaganza winner of Pacific Ascension, making them a partner team for the year, which would require a bit of a stronger presence. Thus, mere months after having their team prove to be the 2nd best Challengers team in Korea, and thus maybe the 2nd best in all of Pacific, Nongshim Red Force bought the entire organization of the best challengers team in Korea, making their acquisition of the Valorant team entirely legal. What was Nongshim Red Force is now on Fear X, and what was Sin Prisa Gaming is now going to get all of the resources that they could ever ask for to assist 5 of the best players you have ever seen in your life. There are no weak spots on this team. There are no glaring problems coming into this league. They will be able to handle this level of play. They will be able to keep up. There is no doubting this team in the community. There is only fearing what they are and will be capable of. Foot Esports were Turkey's premier team, only silenced by groups of death in the tournaments they played. Otherwise, they refused to stop reminding people that they were in the top 4 teams of the region. For such a high average level of play, everyone on the team was remarkably close to that average level. There were 0 weak points on the team and lethal chemistry. They could spring traps in mere seconds, shift tempo on a dime, and have clutch after clutch after clutch moment from anybody. This year, there is no competition to rep the country, but they are still all in on being one of the winningest teams out there. With CNET unfortunately out, they have opted to bring in Zeus, one of the best duelists in Turkish challengers this year. Not only the perfect new addition, but a beyond apt one. This team intends to pick up right from where they left off, and they will succeed. Nobody's even delayed their improvement, and I don't expect them to fall behind the meta shifting. Really, where could the weaknesses for this team be other than the better teams left? There is no room for error at this point in the tier list. And talk about a team that had a big blank to fill this offseason. One of the best teams of Stage 1, and not just in the region, as 100 Thieves made top 4 in Shanghai. They followed that up with some crucial losses that just barely kicked them out of champs contention, but it didn't detract from the level that all 5 of these players were simultaneously at. Every single one of them made a case to be the best in the role they played in the region, especially Bang, the game-dictating controller. He has now gone to greener pastures, and the one player spot open for 100 Thieves this year has gone to probably the best replacement they could ask for. Xander has similar fragging ability, a swath of controller experience at the highest level on M80, and even some time with the IGL reigns. 100 Thieves have every reason to hit the ground running in the top click of the region, and they have no intention of slowing down. 2 more assistant coaches have now also been picked up to give these kids a full-fledged Valorant playground. Expect constant strat switch-ups and a SWAT team's efficiency. Fnatic's kickoff upset loss to Karmine Corps was the only blemish on a team that continued to beat every European opponent they came across, giving them the 1 seed in both international tournaments despite not being the best European team at international events. And they did it all with an emergency 5th in Hero. He is not sticking around, and Leo's still not coming back just yet, but Durka has also turned tail, making this team need not 1, but 2 new additions. A month ago, I'd tell you about how Kayak getting a call-up is perfect, like so perfect, like chef's kiss. I would go on for hours. And then I'd mention Sayonara, say good luck, and put Fnatic in high C tier. But now, this team has decided to throw a hook and line out to America for the EMEA exodus. With Crashies now on the team, my faith in it has been restored, my excitement revitalized, and my cursor dragging this team up to A. An overflowing library of game intelligence courses through the veins of Fnatic still, and it'll show. This next pick may be a little delusional, as Fun plus Phoenix are to most people just the bottom seed of all 3 of the internationals they went to last year. But the real gamers know how close FPX was behind EDG all the way through China's regional playtime. They, if anything, made people doubt EDG going into majors because of how close they made matches with them. And how about their most electrifying performance by far in Shanghai, with Life as another stunning duelist that just refused to be unlocked, supported by some great fight openers. They rocked the home stage like they were always meant to be here. Because they were, and certainly still are. While Lysor was fantastic, it's not only safe to say he was FPX's worst player of the season, but the new acquisition, Yosemite, is without a shadow of a doubt an upgrade. And now I can't stop thinking about this team using Taeho. They're going to be doing that, by the way, and I can't help but fear that this team is too low on my rankings, but this feels more than safe enough for me. Crew Esports did not start the season off as a ferocious bunch of crazed lunatics that won all the time like people expected them to, but after acquiring Heat, they fixed that right up. Somehow they didn't get to Shanghai, so they didn't really get to flex until Champs, where they did get a win on the board. That crucial puzzle piece in Heat, along with Klaus, are gone from the roster, scaring a lot of people. Except me! The combination of Mizzino and Adverso is a massive upgrade to the combined contribution of Heat and Klaus, and I'll die on that hill. Dude, I'll die on the Adverso hill. This guy can see openings for initiating, others just can't. He's gonna go absolutely insane this year. It's not like he's not experienced. This new iteration of Crew Esports will not start the season off as a bunch of crazed lunatics that win all the time like we expect them to, but after they figure out what comps to run against teams, they'll fix that right up. Somehow they won't get to an international event until they somehow get the Champs, where they will get a win on the board. The A tier begins and now ends in Korea's second-to-none depth of talent, to its best team of last year and no doubt the best team of Pacific last year, Genji. They took a duelist no one wanted to bet on and turned him into who many think is the best player of the season. They chanced their future on a guy the other players found just dicking around in ranked who had never touched any team setting, and he was the best rookie in the world at the end of the year. And Munchkin, Lakia, and Meteor all ascended to new individual heights that had the whole team take some people's entire top 5 Pacific player lists. Losing the latter 2 of those players is going to slow this team down just a tad, but in their stead are 2 more Korean menaces. Foxy9 is back off the bench permanently with a role that gives him the level of trust he deserves. And Yeoman got Rare Adam to 2nd place in Chinese Ascension in 2023, then went to Korea and played on Nongshim Red Force until they lost in 5 maps to Sin Priza. It's about time this guy does some winning. These 2 have already confirmed their continued prowess in the offseason, so all this team needs is time, and it'll get right back to the podium throughout 2025. Paper Rex stunned all and defied expectations by actually winning an entire tournament rather than just looking like the best team in the history of the universe for the first half of it. Unfortunately, it was one of the stages of Pacific, so there is still higher to go. But those are the levels of expectations this team has. Its best players were all here for the 2024 season. They all played insane for the season. They are all insane. I think, actually, mentally deranged people. These guys just always do their own thing, always go crazy, and they're just so much better, so it works. Absolutely nothing about this team is changing, except that they might be down to play Valorant like normal people sometimes. A new philosophy that has never been tried before. All seriousness, the second this team becomes flexible, they kind of won't have a weakness. But this is the year they've got to win, man. It's been long enough. To be a Paper Rex fan is to be waterboarded by taking over regional play and then dropping the ball at the 2-yard line when they're in a major. Jing will be fully back in Valorant mode, something will be even calmer and more consistent. This team will be like Voltron with the comms they have at this point. This is the year, baby. This has got to be the year. All right, you sycophants. Did I put your gods up high enough? Or are they still the same deities you worship? Perhaps not. After all, Tenzin and Sasi retiring are headlines that almost completely drowned out the incredible season this team had. And what a season it was, having every gamble and idea made by this team turn out to be a good one. Talk about a front office and coach that knows what the hell they're doing. The roster was, of course, those 2 old gods, America's Rookie of the Year John QT, America's Vibes Merchant GOAT Zelsis, and the kid, the killer, Zekin. They played so dang hard they won Masters frickin' Madrid, then got group stage logicked out of contention for Shanghai. They quietly turned themselves into the 4th seed by the time champs rolled around, just to remind everyone how ridiculous they were again, getting just 1 step from the most prestigious podium of the year. Well, it's not like there's going to be a lack of people who are down to join Sentinels, so they had no trouble finding what may be the perfect replacements. Narrate was one of the best players in EMEA last year, and Bang is a controller that can play in Tenz's vein, who arguably has yet to hit his own peak. Additionally, thanks in part to their success in partnerships, and especially bundles this year, Sentinels have the pleasure and privilege of being able to have a development roster and challengers headed by their goated 6th man pick, Redux. That is quite a few T's crossed and I's dotted for both present and future, and it's hard to find something about this team not to like. Buy the bundle. T1 had an unorthodox roster to say the least this past year. Kind of crazy seeing Carpe and Saya player on the same Valorant team, but I digress. This team's fantastic start was thanks to Rossi's IGLing more than anything else, as their skill ceiling was very clearly lower than the tippy top echelon. It showed in game after game where T1 straight up slacked throughout the season, and it materialized into T1 not even making the playoffs of Stage 2. This year, the organization suddenly remembered they were billionaires, so in 2025, they want to play like it. Izu is the only one that remains to welcome a 4th fully Korean team whose worst player is probably going to be freaking Sylvan, who was like the OG guy to save Korea in Pacific back in 23. The rest of their team is, I don't know, one of the greatest cases for a super team you've ever seen in your life. The best possible fall off from the other 2 OG Korean VCT teams in Stax, Buzz, and Meteor have dropped right into T1's money-covered lap, and it's making the entire community quake in their boots. This is like finding a forbidden magical recipe in a cookbook. This is one of the most lethal combinations of players we've ever seen in Valorant history, and they all get to practice a 15-minute walk away from Faker. They could just go stand in his aura whenever they start losing. All seriousness, these are some of the best aimers and thinkers and players in the country, thus the world, thus T1 is going to go mad far in 2025. See y'all in Bangkok for sure at least. World champions. It never gets old to say that EDG finally did it. Kong Kong now turns no heads when you are of the opinion that he's the best to ever play the game, as he silenced what few doubters were left and forever etched his name into history. But he did it alongside a group of demons that were all turned up to 11. Nobody played a trusting and confident IGL that knew what these players were capable of, and Chichu and Smoggy continued to act like arms on the same uber-intelligent octopus, extending with such perfection and completing with such accuracy. While EDG came into this title as China's 1 seeds, their reputation has been thrust into question midway through this year, and thus the team felt a need to upgrade. So somehow they found one, letting Haodong go at what is hopefully his lowest, and nabbing Taiwanese challengers Aim Freak Simon. The investment led to one of the most iconic clips of the year, and a world title. So why change a thing? We haven't seen the beginning of what this team, or the region it's so suddenly dragged to Valorant center stage, have to offer. Get ready to learn Chinese, buddy. I'm thinking back to back to back? To back? To not call this iteration of Team Vitality a super team is to not believe in this team at its best. All it took was a role swap to give Safe a world more value on the team as a duelist, and from there blossomed an unstoppable fight-ready trio. It was Trex, who for the second year in a row had an unforgettable all-star season, and Kix, who opened up said fights beautifully. Sender and Runner, while fantastic this year, are unfortunately victim to this ridiculous build Vitality is going for now. 2 of the most massive yoinks in VCT history have occurred on behalf of the Bees. Durka is now the reason another role swap is bound to occur, being one of the greatest duelists in the history of the game and already having a bevy of trophies under his belt. Ditto for Les, who is now the poster boy of the EMEA Exodus, a guy with a world title long in his rear view, and he's still not even 20. While Heretics proved to be a team Vitality had this knack for beating in the regular season, Vitality are now the apex predators themselves, and for many, favorites for the entire world. I don't see why not. If there's an org that lives to be enshrined in esports history, it's Vitality. In the top 3 sits plenty of North American bias, which I will own to my grave. And to be fair, NRG are technically very unpredictable coming into this season. NRG's 24 season began inches away from a Masters berth, with Demon 1 and Ethan heels off a championship, and Victor, Marved, and Crashies continuing their high-caliber performance. But after a couple tough losses in Stage 1 with some clear comm issues, they took a chance on bringing back Som and FNS. While they couldn't swing wins, they looked like something totally new and promising. I speak for most everyone when I say I'm glad that at least those 2 are still on the team, and they're doing so damn well. FNS is an IGL like no other. Ethan is also stuck around and is still looking like one of the best supporting players out there. In place of Victor and Crashies are 2 of the greatest players to never play at the highest level, Mata and Verno. Holy mother of God, these pickups are unreal. I can't emphasize enough how amazing both of these people are. So I'll just move on to the other pickup it is impossible to get over, and that is the other OXG chunk NRG picked up. It's new coach Bonker, who is as dynamic as all of these players hope to be. This team is going to run rampant throughout the season, and they can win champs if they play well enough. Undeniably, the best team of the 2024 season. Heretics are a team with so many perfect Valorant storylines, so many perfect players, that it's hard to imagine a person who doesn't think this team deserves to win it all this year. Back-to-back Map 5 runners-up in Masters Shanghai and Champions, the first of which they did with a sub, on top of a winning matchup against most all EMEA teams. Brothers on the same team, and neither outshines the other. A professional from Fortnite, who so much of the community wrote off at first, became one of the greatest Valorant pros in Europe. And who could forget 2 of the best Turkish talent pool swipes ever in Rienz and Woot. They make certain you cannot. Why change a damn thing about this team? Every part of it is too important to the history of Heretics and Valorant itself. This is a dynasty waiting to happen, with a team willing to stick around. They think they can do it. I do too. But not as much as my top team. After their now ex-CEO PR'd his organization out of VCT bidding, G2 had the perfect team plop into their hands after another organization completely imploded mere seconds after winning Ascension. I love esports. By the time G2 was through the year, people were ready to rank them top 10 in the world. They breezed through most America's teams and then raised hell when they went to both the final international events. This was a team with great chemistry, one of the best IGLs in the game, one of the best flex players in the game, and their coach is no-nonsense all-game value. This is a team that extracts 100% it can out of every opportunity it comes across. The one point they simply could not nail down was a good duelist. Net was let go, and Icy, while decent, was once again not a superstar carry like G2 wanted, especially if they wanted to maintain their spot in VCT this year. Well, they've gone ahead and fixed that by getting goddamn Jogamo on their goddamn team. God damn, dude. This is a team destined to be a machine, a flexible one at that. They'll embrace the new meta, the new map pool rotation, and all the accolades they'll no doubt get this year. I think they're going to win champs, dude. And with that, we have concluded my VCT tier list for 2025. Not exactly a whole lot of hot takes, but I hope you enjoyed nonetheless. Let me know what your picks for VCT are in the comments and what other kinds of videos you want to see from us here at Cypher. That's all for now. Hope to see you soon.